So in this video, I'm just going to show you how you can do a render, and we're going to do a Playblast render, which is kind of, it's not a full quality render, but it's quite useful. It renders quite quickly. So we're going to show you how you can do that to render out your range of motion to a video. So I've got my range of motion here, and it's going through all the joints and so on. So the first thing I want to do here is actually set up a proper camera, because you always want to keep your perspective view for kind of modeling changes. And if we set up a camera specifically for the render, it means that we can keep the camera where it is, so we don't have to move it. So that if we need to come back and do another render, we'll have the camera in the same place. So let's go to create and then cameras, and we'll just create a standard camera. So let's do that. Here's our standard camera. Then we'll go to panels, perspective, and we can look through that camera. And then I'll adjust the camera just like any viewport, so that I can see the dinosaur, within the viewport. Now, really important here is when you're doing this, what you want to do is actually click on this little button here. It's like a rectangle, and this turns on, basically allows you to see the edges of your camera view. So without that, you don't actually know exactly where the camera is, where the edge of the camera is. But with this, you can see exactly where it is. So now we can position our creature, appropriately. We want to leave a little bit of room at the outside. We don't want something like this. That's just a lot of wasted space there. We can't see it very clearly. But similarly, we want to be able to see the whole thing. It's a bit tricky with something like this. Do you crop it off when the creature goes up like this? I think probably we should. Otherwise, we won't be able to see the rest of the creature clearly the rest of the time. And same for the tail. If your creature's got a very long tail, it might be that gets cropped out for a little bit of it. Now, what we also want to do while we're doing this is actually check that our resolution is correct. So to do that, we'll click on the little clapperboard button here, and there's a clapperboard with a cog symbol. So if I click on this, and then this window here should appear. And what we're interested in, if we scroll down, make sure we're in the common tab, it's this image size button. And hopefully, if yours is not on HD 1080, then you'll want to change it. So HD 1080 means that we're going to be rendering 1920 pixels across and 1080 pixels high, basically. And that's the typical resolution that's used on most TVs these days. And it's what we'll want to render for the whole of this unit, basically, will be 1920 by 1080. It's full HD quality. So once you've changed that, that should be the only thing you'll need to change in here. So we can close that. And if it wasn't set to that resolution, you might find you need to just adjust the camera a little bit after that. So once you're happy with your camera, what you could do is you could lock it, just to make sure that you don't change this accidentally. So if you click on this little lock camera button here, that will lock it. It'll mean I can't accidentally change it anymore. Great. So now what we want to do, we want to actually turn on the wireframe on shaded here. So we've got wireframe on shaded. I'm in textured mode. So if I press 6 on the keyboard, so I'm pressing the 6 key to turn on textures. But like I say, the wireframe is really good, because it means that when we go through and look at the range of motion, it allows us to identify any issues much more clearly, because we can see the small movements of the mesh. So for example here, this arm's moving, but I've got a lot of movement going on here, which isn't ideal, so that could be improved, and so on. Here, for example, I can see there's a bit of movement going on here, which isn't correct. So yeah, turn on the wireframe. We also want to hide the skeleton and any other things. So we're just looking at the mesh. So I've actually got my skeleton added to a layer here. So I selected the pelvis and I went to create layer from selected, and that means I can turn off the visibility for that. And also I've got the foot control that I've added, and the knee position vector, pole vector thing, I've got that added to that layer as well. So if I click on that, it will turn off all of those things. You could also just simply select them in the view in the outliner and press H on the keyboard to hide them as well. and H also re-shows them afterwards. So once we've done that, that's all good. So I think at that point we are ready to render this. So what you do now is you will right click on the timeline. So it's right click here, and Playblast is the bottom thing that comes up, and we'll click on the option box to bring up the options for this. So let's click on that. This window should appear. And you might find that some of yours has some of these things turned on. It just means that it will render some additional elements like interface elements. We don't really want those, so I'm going to turn those off. The format, you will probably want an AVI. That's a video file as opposed to like an image sequence. So we'll go AVI. And you may find that your list of codecs is different if you're doing this from home. But normally the top one works best. This is just the compression that's added to the video. If you're having issues with it, you may find that you need to turn this off to none. But to start with, let's try this one. So the IYUV codec tends to work best. The video will turn out a very large file. It could be several gigs. So we'll probably want to run it through another app afterwards to just reduce the file size so that it's not a ridiculously big file. Display size should be from render settings as opposed to from window. And the scale, if yours is set to 0.5, that will basically render like a half resolution size. So we'll turn that up to full, so it does render the full resolution. We do want to save to file, so make sure that's turned on. And then you can click on Browse to choose where to save it. And you can then navigate to wherever you want to save this. So that is fine for me, and I'm going to put in range of motion 01, and I'll click on save. Now the really funny thing is that before you actually click on apply to render this, what you need to do before you render it is actually turn off the resolution gate. So I said that the resolution gate is really important so that you can actually see the render, and if I just select the camera, you'll see that properly. But what will happen if you don't turn that off before you render? Annoyingly, when you do a Playblast, it will actually render the kind of resolution gate within the render. Like you'll get this grey border around your render, which you don't want, basically. So before we click on apply, we just need to make sure we come over here and actually turn that off, and then you'll see something like this, and then you click on apply, and it'll go through and do the render. Here we go. So let's let that carry on.